Not Free Love, Part 4. All other parts down below. After the divorce, I reconnected online, long distance, with a female friend, Tiger, from my past. For months we had very open, honest conversations, and eventually met up a few times. I then moved out of state with my daughter, as planned. We returned to my hometown, where I have wanted to live again for years, but X forbid, and we are both loving being close to family again. Tiger and I are now seeing each other frequently, but with boundaries regarding my daughter and hers. I have me time, I have daddy-daughter time, and I have tea time. It is working well. I'm finding that life is a wonderful thing. There is beauty everywhere, of all types, and all I need to see that is the right perspective, the right focus. What do I want in life? What do I enjoy? What do I value? I discover more about myself every day. I love who I am, which enables me to treat myself and also to continue improving. Daughter is doing well. Absolutely loves being around her grandmother and cousins. We've been going to visit one relative or another about every night. She's off to the movies with grandma, aunt and 2 cousins right now. Tomorrow we are going to the zoo. This weekend having a cookout at the dam. Next weekend going to a lake. Her mother is still missing good night calls here and there, but D7 isn't letting her off the hook. Now that she has her own phone, she calls her mom the next day and starts off with, "Why didn't you call last night?" Last night they spoke and I could hear D's end of the conversation. D, so, did you find another job yet? Why not? Don't you do that already? Why have you had so many jobs? Last night was the first time D7 broke down crying at bedtime since we've arrived. I have received 2 referrals for child doctor in the area, and more that I've been told to avoid. Today was great. I conquered X's spaghetti sauce. It is D's favorite meal and X previously refused to give up the recipe, opting to make us sauce and sneak it into my freezer during kid swaps instead. I ducking nailed it. D7 loved it and cleared her bowl in record time, asking if I got the recipe from her mom. I also found a child psych in the area that does play therapy, the type recommended by her previous therapist. First opening next week and then bi-weekly. Most every other slot for the next month plus is booked up, which I've learned is a good sign with IC. I got a text from X informing me that she has mailed off a money order for her half of the expenses to prep the house for sale. Received a $550 refund check for the home insurance, as well as an unexpected check from my VP for some quick side work that I did for him for free as a friend. My brother is moving back here tomorrow, so I'll be making the 2-hour trip to the airport to pick him up. Tiger will be coming along to keep me company. A few other developments, observations. Tiger's car broke down right before she was to meet me for lunch one day. She did not call me for help or with excuses. She worked it out on her own and showed up on time for the lunch date. Didn't even tell me about the car until talking to me on the phone that night. Car was in the shop for nearly a week. During that time, I offered to pick her up. She declined and found her own transportation during that time. Self-sufficient and capable. When meeting up to go places together, I usually insist on driving. I've noticed though that when I let her drive me instead, she is pleased. This is good for me too. I never let X drive. If I was in the car with her, I was driving. Period. No discussion. Even on long road trips, I would refuse to let her take a turn. It was due to fear and control. Fear due to my brother's fatal car accident, or my feelings about it. Control is a way to cope, an attempt to manage. I am learning to let that go. I let T drive my car for the 2-hour trip back from the wedding a while back. I was anxious about it at first, but it was really nice to just sit back and let someone else take the wheel. Another thing, I've found that I'm guarding myself quite a bit with T. My communication with her has not been as open and honest as it was in the beginning, because I am holding back. I have feelings that I want to disclose, things I want to tell her. We've become very close, but I have thrown a wall up. Of course, she has her own, but those should not be my concern. Many times, I find myself looking into her eyes and wanting to say more, only to remain silent and smile instead, followed by another long hug. I have love for her, but I have fear. I do not fear telling her and not hearing the same thing in response. I fear opening her up to hurt. Sure, the bonding is good. Sure, the validation is nice. But my feelings don't change when those are absent. Yes, oxytocin, etc. love drug. Chemicals released into the brain with a good feeling. Am I rationalizing? Is she a rebound? Is it real? All good questions that should be explored. Each time we meet or talk, she says something that intrigues me, challenges me. We talk about our faults. We acknowledge them. Yes, my fixer part wants to surface and sometimes does, as does hers. But I believe we see each other as we are, not as we were or can be. We thoroughly enjoy our time together, over coffee, even just for 15 minutes. The playground where we don't touch. Meditation where we don't talk. On the phone. Tonight, the monk was talking about anger and discontent. How the connection between we and others is an innocent glass tube. If we release our emotional poison into the tube, that is what the other will receive. When in a place of discontent, our actions are not pure, our intentions murky. I do not feel that with T nowhere close. I am relaxed and peaceful around her. My feelings toward her have not changed, only grown. But there is the test. Is it attachment, or is it love? I believe the differentiator is intention. But can I give love if I cannot listen and stop fixing? I think some of my fear comes from my past. I said the big three to X first. Obviously, I don't want a repeat of that ordeal. But unlike then, I can see it in T's eyes. She's admitted she carefully picks her words around me. So of course, she is being cautious too. Because I've been so vocal in the last few months about my ideas on what love is and is not. Shooting myself in the foot, overanalyzing yet again. Being a coward, righteous caution. I'm not sure tonight, but I feel the same. I had an excellent weekend with T, TD3, D7 and the dog. I had a good time at home with D7 who is fast asleep with dreams of tomorrow. I had a good movie date with T. I had a great meditation group. I had a good conversation with my sister and also with my mom and a less common one with my dad. I got an unexpected call from my brother in Alaska. I found out the house is pretty much a go if I am okay with roofing in the next decade. Yet I sit awake at 4 a.m. drinking a beer. I had another excellent weekend. Park time with D7, Tiger and TD3 then out to dinner. Said it was raining so I took D to the fun park by our apartment for a full day of roller skating, bowling, arcade and indoor jungle gym. It was her first time bowling and roller skating and she loved them both. Sunday, I hit another milestone with Tiger. She invited me to go four-wheeling with her parents. 45 minutes drive with them and then a day riding ATVs in the mountains. Me driving one with Tiger on back, her father driving the other with her mother. It was my first time driving one and a couple times I felt that good old dad was testing me a bit. Speeding off ahead, taking harder trails, to see if I could keep up. I kept up fine, even cracked jokes with him, which wasn't easy. He's a hard, serious man. But before long I saw some goofiness in him. Tiger was surprised how well it went. Later that night I took D7 to Tiger's house for dinner. I took the main part of the meal so it wasn't just T cooking for us. E had fun playing with her dogs. On the drive home I noticed D missed a call from her mom, so I had her return the call to say goodnight. D, we're just leaving Tiger's house. D, just eating dinner and playing with her dogs. D, yes, the white one. This was good. He brought up Tiger to X and X responded well. She told D funny stories about previous encounters with one of Tiger's dogs and they laughed and joked about the furball. I was pleased with how that went. That was a great opportunity for X to get weird. But if she doesn't make it an issue and shows D that she knows Tiger and isn't weird about it, then D can be more open with her mom without feeling awkward discussing things. I don't say this often, but X deserves kudos for that exchange. I was getting pretty stressed the last week or so, dealing with the unknown in regard to the house, where D7 will be going to school, etc. Meditation certainly helps with this, but I see I have plenty of room for growth and improvement. Things are going well though. I was finally able to get a structural engineer out to the property to certify that the place is sound. All is well, so I'm now under contract and should be closing on the house in 2 weeks, right when school starts. I was pleasantly surprised to see that the owner finished the floors in 2 of the rooms, something she didn't have to do. Also, X called me yesterday to ask if next week is okay for her to come and visit D7. No 2 weeks notice per the plan. No 1 week notice per our recent verbal agreement. But I am not being a stickler there, this time. D7 has been refusing to call her mom yet expressing how much she misses seeing her in person. She has some anger there. I agreed to the visit. Summer is her time. It will be good for her. X and D7 will both be staying at my mother's house for the week. On one hand, I'm looking forward to a break and spending some adult time with Tiger. On the other, I am anxious about not having my daughter for a week. I don't recall ever being away from her for a week, but that means this is good for me. Hard is good. Of course, I can always stop by my parents' house and see her, but that is complicated. I do not want to give D7 false hope of R by spending much time with both of them together. There, I'll have to feel it out. The situation is weird and like I said before, I doubt X will last a week there anyway. I told X that she should be the one to tell D7 she is coming. She did on a phone call last night. It was the first time I've heard D say I love you to her mom since we moved. I fear that after this visit, should it actually happen, it may be harder on D7 than the original move. But that is out of my control and the reason I have her in weekly IC sessions. X did mention the Thanksgiving visit again. She said that they are open to flying up and flying back with D7 so she doesn't have to fly alone and so I don't have to fly with her. Because you've been paying everything for health insurance and all that, which is expensive. I dropped off D7 at her first day of 2nd grade this morning. She was so excited. I dressed her in a cute skirt and top that her mother bought her when she was here. I surprised her with a new pair of shoes that she loves. Took pictures of her before we left and at the new school. All is well, except I was surprised how hard it was for me. I wasn't expecting to trigger, but wow I did. I couldn't hold back tears on the drive home. Such an amazing, intelligent, beautiful girl. I hate the thought of her triggering, feeling anything remotely close to this. Seeing all the kids with their moms. I hope this is harder for me than it is for her, but I know that likely is backward. I realize that my trigger is largely due to an attachment to a delusion that her life should be normal. I see that, but it is still there, and it still hurts. I had an interesting development yesterday. While out to lunch with Tiger, she said there has been something bothering her for some time that she wanted to talk about. She was clearly very nervous. Her concern was the way I handled D7 after she said she doesn't want to see me kiss T. I told her I wouldn't in front of her. T said her concern was not the kissing, but that a standard was being set of letting D7 dictate the situation. Also, that it was an unrealistic promise as the more time we spend together, the more likely D7 will see us being affectionate. We discussed the importance of D7 feeling at ease discussing her concerns and being heard. However, T feels I went too far too fast in order to make D feel better, and make myself feel better about D's comfort. The beginnings of the inevitable power struggle between D and T. Tiger had been sitting and stewing on this for some time. Clear case of little things getting bigger the longer they sit. She explained that she was nervous about saying anything because of her previous relationship confrontations. Constructive criticism were met with anger and defensiveness. I told her that she had a good point. I thanked her for bringing it up. I asked her to please speak up sooner in the future, and I told her I would discuss it with the child psych. Her face and body language relaxed as relief washed over her. She joked that she was ready to punch me if I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." She then told me she was interested in proactively seeing a counselor specializing in blended families, jointly and individually as needed. I love that she is open to therapy. Later that day I took Dee to her appointment and discussed this with the child psych. She stressed the importance of avoiding making promises to kids as it only sets you up for failure. Also, that I need to have more talks with Dee about what having a girlfriend means. That hugging, kissing, is a way to show someone you care about them, and that I will do that with my girlfriend, while validating her concerns and feelings, of course, and then to be prepared for the questions that will follow. Don't you care about mom anymore? Will you stop caring about me, etc. She informed me that in therapy she isn't seeing much to work with, and D7 she's doing great. I'm happy to continue working with you too, but this is great news, but I don't want to pull her out of therapy. Instead, we are switching the approach and objective. D7 is currently having a harder time adjusting to all the changes and dad having a girlfriend than being separated from her mother. On the surface at least, I think we should tackle the things that are sticking up as they happen, keeping mom issues as long-term. I am now taking her bi-weekly rather than weekly. I'm in a weird spot. Thanksgiving was good. I prepared a bunch of vegan dishes to take to my parents' house for the big family dinner. None of them are on any sort of diet at all, much less vegan. I'm lactose intolerant, so it always sucks when I can't eat anything but turkey, and now I'm pretty much off meat too. So, I took spinach and bean stuffed squash, cauliflower basil gravy, cranberry biscotti, and veggie lentil soup with coconut milk. It was barely touched, but I had a plate full of yummy stuff that I could eat. I didn't invite Tiger. The weird part, I wasn't exactly sure why. Of course, Thanksgiving had come up in conversation beforehand, so the opportunity was there. But I didn't. I joked about it a bit but never came out with it. I've been trying to step back and understand why. I love her. I want her to be around. But this Thanksgiving I had a lot of mixed emotions. It is 1 year since X and I decided to file, and she made our last meal. It is weird for D7 because she was supposed to be with her mom and got let down. Perhaps I wanted it as simple as possible for her, and I'd be a liar if I didn't say it was for me too. Perhaps I wanted to take the opportunity to show off a little with my cooking without the assumption that it was due to whichever woman I'm currently with. Maybe the holidays are just so personal with my close family and I don't feel she's quite there yet. Immediately I don't think so, but probably a combination of all of them. Hard for me to make sense of it, much less for her to do so. I did take her food, knowing she wouldn't have had many good options either. She later came by and watched a movie with D7 and I, but it seemed forced. It was different. She left earlier than she needed to. Basically, it boils down to the fact that the roller coaster lasts longer than we think it will, which can be surprising. And if it's confusing to us, it must be for others. I feel joy and excitement for what I have with T. I miss the good parts of what I had with X at the same time. I'm still thankful for both. T has met my family many times. She's been a friend of me and my brother for years, so has been around, just not in that capacity. There is some hesitancy due to that still though. My family is very conservative, religious and judgmental, and Tiger is covered in tattoos. I think that hesitancy is more on her part though. I'm used to them. I'm convinced T thinks my mother doesn't like her, at least not as my girlfriend, which is true to an extent. My mother could like her fine, but she'll never be as good as a nice church girl. When there is the option, T would rather not stop off at my folks' house. Some of this surely is that I don't want her to accept an invitation to do so simply out of obligation. I suspect that me not inviting her did hurt her feelings a little, as Mav said, but I also think she was likely a bit relieved. We did talk a bit about it and had a really nice day together yesterday. Months later, it's been a while since I posted an update. Things are going well. On Christmas Eve I picked up D7 from my parents' house. She was ready to go and it went smoothly. We were invited to Tiger's parents' house. They celebrate on Christmas Eve. It was really nice. Dinner with her whole family, some of which I met for the first time. Then gift exchange around the fire followed by playtime with the kids and their new toys. The more I observe T's mother, the more I love them both. The more I observe her father, the deeper my respect for him grows. After that, T and her daughter came back to my house with us. TD3 and D7 had a sleepover while T and I stayed up into the early morning wrapping and assembling gifts for them both. We then slept for a couple hours before moving to the couch. We wanted to see their faces as they came downstairs in the morning. This was a big step. We had talked about it at length, contemplated, and talked more. I also talked to D7 about spending Christmas together beforehand. She was all for it and pointed out that their stockings were already hanging at our house. At first, I was worried about how Dee would react to leaving her mother for the night, but she did absolutely great. In the morning we exchanged more gifts, had breakfast together, and played until right before noon. Then T took TD3 to her father's and I took D7 back to her mother. On the short drive she told me she had an awesome Christmas and told me how much she loves me. When we walked into my parents' place it was a madhouse of people. As usual on the holidays, I quickly exchanged gifts with my siblings and watched as my mother received the new oven range that my brother and I had purchased. I gave my father a gift. He scanned the room to make sure the coast was clear and said, "I really don't want this arrangement to happen again." I don't blame you. During I noticed X switching from smiling at me to scowling. My brother later told me she was complaining to him about how I took D7 for Christmas Eve. Too bad. I said goodbyes and left. I turned down offers to go see movies with family members a few times and spent the rest of the day with T. Later a few siblings stopped by for a bit. It was actually an excellent Christmas. Better than I had hoped. The next day I showed up at my parents' house a little before X was scheduled to leave. She had been hinting to everybody that she didn't want to take the shuttle again but, as far as I know, never came out and asked anyone for a ride. So eventually she made a reservation for the shuttle on her own. I was there for D7's goodbyes with her mom but was intentionally in the other room. There as D needed me, but not intruding on their moment. Later my mother told me that D7 did much better this time with the parting than she did during the summer with me not there. This time X was in tears but D was not, though obviously not happy about her mother leaving. After X left, D asked to go home. That was new as she usually doesn't want to leave grandma's house full of toys, sweets, and playful cousins. The next couple days was daddy-daughter decompression time. At bedtime one night she expressed unhappiness that X and I divorced. We talked about it again and she was super cuddly those days. The second day after X left, we missed her nightly call by about an hour. As always when that happens, I picked up the phone and asked if she wanted to call her mother back. She almost always says yes, but this time said no. I knew the aftermath would be more troublesome than the visit and there would be a necessary adjustment period. So I did not press the issue. Since then, they've had good, long talks with each other. Then New Year's Eve, I had some family, a couple friends, and tea over for some drinks, food and games. I let Dee stay up to see the ball drop. While I was putting her to bed, X called the home phone downstairs. My brother, who'd had a few, answered. I was told he said hello multiple times with no answer. He checked the caller ID and saw my name. X's phone still comes up with my name even though I'm off her account. Not sure how or why and thought I must be ducking with him and said, "Duck off," and hung up. I came down from Dee's room to find Tiger handing me the phone telling me it was X. She had called back and talked to my brother, who apologized and explained. X immediately began complaining. X, so your brother just told me to duck off. Oh, X, yeah, so that happened. He told me to duck off. I have no control over what my brother does. 10-1 texted you hours ago to see if Dee was still up. I'd like to say Happy New Year, unless that's a problem. I checked after. She texted 20 minutes prior to the call. I've been cooking. I haven't checked my phone. X, well, your brother. Would you like to speak to Do? 10-1 don't know. Is anyone else in your house going to tell me to duck off? She's not asleep yet. Do you want to talk to her? X, yes. I later got a text at 1:11 a.m. X, you should probably tell your brother to not answer the phone with a duck off. Happy New Year. No response needed. Sarcasm, dumping, fishing, and against my boundaries to respond to a text not about D, especially a late night one. The pattern then repeated, because she was mad about something I did or didn't do. She didn't call Dee the next day. It really is funny, except for punishing Dee for perceived slights. But I can't control that. It is what it is. And it won't get me to capitulate. Not anymore. I'm too busy enjoying my new life. I was asked if I made any resolutions. I did. Continue. T, really, your resolution is kept on keeping on. Yes, sort of. Back to the spiral. Steady, continuous, gradual progression. A month later, things are going pretty well. T's dog came down very ill and after multiple days at the vet in poor condition was put down. As a dog lover, it had quite an impact on her. I expected her to lean on me in a time of grief, but she pulled back. Mentioned a few times her dislike for people asking how she was doing. I invited her out and she declined. Didn't feel like doing anything. It took conscious effort not to take things personally. As a fixer, I felt a strong need to be needed. It's hard to see a loved one in pain and know that you aren't the solution, and hard to realize that the difficulty stems from a certain type of arrogance. But I had to remind myself that her grief has nothing to do with me and she should process in her own way. My assumptions of what that process should be are simply that, mine. So, I told her I was here for her, ready and willing to help, and asked her to let me know when, how, and if she needed anything. Told her to call if she wanted to talk, and then I let it be, which wasn't easy. It was days before we spoke again. I didn't call, text, or show up. I waited for her to reach out. It was difficult as the fixer part was telling me it was my job to comfort, to check in, rescue. It told me I was being insensitive, but that went against what she had shown me she needed, space. Later when she asked me to coffee, I showed up. I let her talk about it as I listened. I invited her to a dinner with my brother for his B-day. She said she'd like to but needed to check on something and would get back to me. Dinner time came and she hadn't. I resisted the urge to remind her and had a good time with D7 and family. She later asked me how it was and I told it was a lot of fun but expressed disappointment that she never got back to me. That worked much better than sitting on it. The next day we had a really great date night. Spent time together with D7 and T the following day too. I told her that later in the afternoon I was to transport my nephew a few hours south, and told her she could come along, maybe go to dinner in the city. She expressed a desire to do so but wasn't ready at time of departure. I probably could have pushed it back to accommodate, but that request wasn't made. I stopped myself from assuming that was what she wanted and left. I dropped off my nephew and stopped off to spend some time with a buddy in the area. I'm glad I did. As the relationship has progressed, I find that I've likely become too focused on her. I previously set boundaries for X due to what I've decided is good for me, yet have not focused on same when it comes to T, more willing to budge even absent request. I find it takes consistent focus to remain the center of the mobile. Lose focus and you start twirling around someone else's center. Start twirling and it's inevitable to look outside oneself for stability. Stay focused on remaining still. Dating after divorce is a very tricky balance. Even more so when you're a full-time parent. More difficult still when your partner is also a divorced parent. While the feelings are obvious, priority and time tends to limit availability to a significant extent. This can be very challenging when you highly value quality time. If you rise to 50,000 feet, you can see what appears to be two people dancing around each other. That looks discouraging. But if you remain still and keep looking, you see that both are revolving around separate centers. They're children. The rotation slows down and pauses when the orbits bring them into contact, yet it doesn't happen very often. This is very different from the concept of family that many of us repeat in our minds. Two revolving around a one in unison. It looks difficult. It looks less satisfying, and in some ways both is true. Yet at the same time there is beauty as both agree on the importance of that which they revolve around even with different orbits. They are separate, yet I think it possible to bring them both closer together and align the rotating parents more frequently in the process. I hope so. Months later, well, it's official. T and I are done. Cordial breakup with a hug, kiss, and a take care. I won't pretend. We were off and on for the last few months and had some drama on both sides, but not enough to prevent a friendly breakup, perhaps because we both still care about each other. It became apparent though that we have different views on committed relationships and ultimately different end games. Today is D8's last day of second grade. We moved from a state with a terrible education system to a much better school. And she is still excelling, and getting a bit bored because of it. After the first parent-teacher conference, the normal homework was scrapped and she was given higher-level material. Even with that, she didn't do homework every night. She could sit down on Sunday and knock out the advanced homework for the entire week in an hour. I'm so proud of her. After she gets home today, we're off to the lake for the weekend. Should be some good quality time before I take her to her mom's for the summer. After the divorce, during healing period, I was absolutely gun-shy and jaded about M. Now, with help from a ton of IC, I'm back to where I was before X. After a night of being treated like a king, I want to wake up next to my queen and make her some pancakes. A month later, anyone remember that April Fool's prank I pulled? Well, it has happened in real life, on a level I never expected. I know many here will disagree, and I don't give a crap. I'm reconciling with my ex. New me sees this as a good thing. This is right in so many ways, and I can say that with confidence. Before the divorce, she vowed she would never live here, and she meant it. She is now willing to move wherever I want, without financial assistance from me. Home is wherever daughter and I live. What reconciling will look like for me. Initially, long hard conversations, observing behavior in extremely stressful situations, enforcing boundaries, watching to see if respect is present, gauging interactions, analyzing motives, intentionally testing waters, removing filters and speaking honestly, instantly, and looking for the same, watching to see if self-restraint is present. looking for self-awareness, listening for true remorse, acknowledging when it occurs, accepting reality versus searching for delusion, and walking away when necessary. The divorce was absolutely necessary and completely warranted. She acknowledges that neither of us would be where we are without it. I do not regret it. She knows now that I had to do it and does not blame me. She is finally accepting personal accountability. I've openly told her that I fell for T, and residuals there still exist and will. The things I was looking for before I moved away with D8 are now there. There is no more I don't know. She knows exactly what she wants, and that fits very well with what I want. She had an opportunity to come home with me immediately. Instead, she chose to stay with her grandparents and care for them during a heart attack recovery. That is extremely stressful for her. They are at the point where they do not appreciate her help and rile against it, even though they really do need it. She is staying until she can train her aunt how to take care of the medication and hopefully secure an in-home caregiver. Her employer is working on a transfer for her to my location. I've told her I won't be a sugar daddy and she need to pull her own weight. She acknowledges that working is a must for personal fulfillment and night shifts away from us is a no-go, as it facilitated past issues between us. During the stress of near passing and ICU, she started emotionally dumping on me. I was there for support but had my limits. When my limit was reached, I told her so and exited the room. The next night it continued, but before I could even say anything, she saw herself undoing it again and she left the room to process on her own without dumping on me. That was very different from the woman I divorced, who would have continued to the point of anger and personal attacks. Even in this stressful situation she was very respectful and, in the morning, immediately apologized, even when it was unnecessary. She definitely hit bottom, no question. Once again, she's a hell yeah wife. Whatever it takes. Can she maintain that? I don't know. Is it worth a shot? Hell yeah. I know when T reads this or sees us on FB, she'll think I'm retarded. Oh well, she had many chances and decided this wasn't for her. No matter what happened, the mother of my child and decade-long partner deserves a second chance. Now that she's willing to own her crap and work for it, something that the amazing Tiger was not willing to do, it's up to her to set boundaries as well. Boundaries for others she interacts with, and boundaries for herself that I must try to respect. I do have my own faults and did some things wrong, leading her to feel unloved and unappreciated. In order to prevent things from breaking down in the future, it's in the best interest of the relationship for me to work on those things. My comment. Final ending coming to this story coming today as well. I need to eat before I work on this as I am starving. Check out the other parts down below if you haven't.